On the show, we often talk about wokery and things that are different in the 21st century, the shockability factor. I think possibly for my generation, there was nobody more shocking than Madonna in the 1980s and early 90s. And when you think about her, you kind of think, well, yeah, she did a lot of things, but also she copied a lot of people, a lot of looks, the looks of Marlene Dietrich, Marilyn Monroe, Lana Turner, all the big greats that she referenced in that mega track Vogue way back in 1990. Can you imagine? But of course, when you look back a little bit further, you realize that even in this climate now where we have drag queens going into schools to teach kids about gender equality and all that nonsense, it's all been done before by someone bigger, better, and more shocking and more outrageous, quite literally over 96 years ago. As ever, let me explain. Hi, good morning. Nice to see you. Yes, when you talk about big people, icons of a generation, you do think of the few, don't you? And one of the biggest icons, really, that I was lucky enough to get some first-hand accounts from this particular gentleman, Tony Curtis, great friend, great raconteur, and literally had worked with everyone. What was interesting here, I found, was, you see, that Tony was lucky enough to work with the brilliant international sex symbol icon, Mae West, on one of her latter-day films. And what he told me was this, and it's really refreshing to look back at that interview and remember exactly that nothing is new. You see, this, way back in 1926, Mae West opened off Broadway in a very smallish sort of theatre in a play that she'd written, produced, and was starring in herself called Sex. Right, even before Madonna's infamous book of the same name in the 90s, Mae was doing it bigger, better, and bolder than anybody else. And basically, Broadway was suffering something of a slump at that particular period. And even though it got terrible reviews, it was a sellout. Mae knew exactly what to do to generate publicity. But it was a 10-day stint in jail that really set the show on the road, breaking box office records, where then she took it on tour and became instantly very wealthy. You see, what Mae was doing was using the chorus girls of the show, but some in fact were men dressed as women. Really shocking in 1926. And Mae, along with certain people of her company, got arrested, and she had to do what we would consider today community service for 10 days. Of course, when she came out, everybody wanted to interview her, and the early newsreels were taking her picture. Interesting to note, as I say, that when you look back in history, simply because it's forgotten today, people think, oh, it's shocking, it's new, what people are doing, it's absolutely terrible. It's all been done before. It was done in the Georgian times, done in the Victorian times. Everybody reinvents it for a different decade. But as Tony Curtis told me, Mae knew exactly what she was doing. She needed to get herself on the map. She knew she wasn't the most prettiest, the best actress, whatever. She was creating a caricature, a character for her to play for the rest of her life. And when she'd written this now infamous play, as he pointed out, there was simply no going back. No one was ever going to ask her to take on Shakespeare. But then again, could Shakespeare take on Mae West? But more importantly, she set the stone for being what she became, which was an icon. And as Tony pointed out, even at her ripe old age when they were making the movie, she was still as feisty, fun, and demanding as ever, and loved the notoriety that she'd started way back, as I say, over 90 plus years ago. So next time we're all a bit shocked by certain stories in the press about wokery, cancel culture, let's just remember there were other people doing it better, bigger, and more importantly, first. Neil Sean in the very heart of London.